Hi everyone, I hope you're all feeling well and that your families and you are surviving the lockdown okay. This may be the first time you've come to a webinar like this, or it may be one of many you've done. It's my first time giving one, so bear with me. That said, it's great to be able to have the chance to talk to everyone today and let you know a few of my reflections and some of our plans as we go through the current crisis. I've always felt that the two greatest reasons to be part of RDA has been the unpredictability of my working day and the great people that I get to meet and work with across the organisation. Right now, I have to admit that I'm slightly cursing that unpredictability and certainly didn't expect 2020 to turn out like this. Every day the last 6 weeks has brought news, some welcome, some far less so, and for us all, it's become a game of juggling the unknown. However, probably more than at any other time during my time at RDA, I'm grateful for people who make up this organisation, for the volunteers, the riders and drivers, the staff, and of course our donors, my colleagues, people like you. It's been fantastic to see and hear everybody rally round and support each other in the way in which we all have. So I'd like to start this afternoon by acknowledging that and saying a massive thank you to you and everyone within the organisation. Trustees, volunteers, staff at groups who've all had to react quickly and adapt to new circumstances, to the trustees and volunteers of RDA UK, especially the regional and county teams, who I know have done a lot to support the network, and to my colleagues here at National Office. Everyone has been brilliant, and it's been an exciting and proud organisation to be a part of. We are an organisation that's built on energy and passion and the commitment of those people who make it up. So this response shouldn't be a surprise, but it's heartening and reassuring to see it actually happen. So I want to spend a bit of time today reflecting on where we are now and my views on the impact that this will have both on RDA and the wider charity sector. And I also want to talk a bit about what we've done to respond and what our plans are to take things forward as we start to hear about entering the next phase of change. A few people have asked some specific questions of me, and I will cover these off. And I suspect that these topics are things that are on the minds of many of you. And if there are things that are on your mind that I don't cover off, then please feel free to drop us an email, and we'll try and get to that. So first of all, it's worth reflecting that just 2 months ago, at the beginning of March, we were all watching coronavirus slightly from afar, and having that very human response of seeing this as something that was largely going to affect other people, or so we hoped. We knew it might become more of a problem, but I don't think any of us had understood or anticipated the extent to which it would become a problem. In some ways, we're like a boat sailing into a storm, not sure if it was going to hit us, and not sure of the impact if it did. Well, it's turned out to be a fairly major storm, and it's changed every aspect of the way we live at the moment, and the full scale of the change won't be fully understood for some time. While we've managed our way through the immediate impact, we're now starting to think about where next. It was a bizarre and somewhat distressing moment to have to advise the stopping of all activity, and one we didn't take lightly. We're fully aware of the impact that's had on riders and drivers, as well as on volunteers and the way groups can survive. However, looking back in our current context, it feels a completely reasonable place to be. Since that reaction and the quick lockdown of all of your groups, for which we were immensely grateful, we've all been having to work to adapt and in many ways having to invent new ways of doing things as we go. Shortly after the government's announcement about furlough, Claire and I met with our H advisors on the phone, of course, to understand how that would work. There were many questions they didn't seem to know the answer to, and as I challenged them on this, I was reminded by him that, quote, 4 days ago, none of this law actually existed. And I was gently and fairly, I think, told to back off. This challenge persists as we continue to find ourselves in a place where we know that more will change, but we can't answer the important questions about the extent of that change or the timescale yet. In some ways, it seems this is the same challenge that Boris and his government are facing, albeit on a much bigger scale. As a key part of the UK's charity landscape, it's clear that the wider impact on the sector is going to be profound and probably long-term. NCVO is estimating that fundraising will be hit by a drop of around £4 billion this year, Currently, almost half of charity employees have been furloughed, and a news report just released this morning shows that 90% of charities think they will only meet around half their targets for this year. As we begin to think about coming out of the lockdown and trying to restart our services, the impact will, I believe, be even more keenly felt as the challenge of fundraising is exacerbated by the ongoing financial implications that will follow the government's bailout of the economy. Lower investment returns will hit all of those trusts and foundations that give grants, and our regular donors may well feel more cautious about giving their money. So there's going to be less available at a time when more will be asked for. So we're all going to need to be much more creative about fundraising. I know that many funders have set up specific funds to support charities that are directly involved in responding to the pandemic and the lockdown. And while this is totally reasonable and a good thing to be happening, I think there's a danger that this is diverting funding away from charities like RDA, where that response is harder to make. There is, I believe, a danger that smaller community charities like RDA groups that are not immediately able to respond risk losing out. We're making this point to organisations that we're part of, NCVO, the Small Charities Coalition, for example, in order to influence the decision makers and the funders. If we're not careful, I believe in the aftermath of this crisis, we risk losing the very organisations that society will be most in need of. The small local charities that provide brilliant and life-changing support in a dedicated and meaningful way to the people that need that support, most commonly with the support through volunteer effort. RDA is very much at the heart of this kind of movement, and rest assured we're fighting this as hard as we can, and I will continue to do so. However, it's not all doom and gloom. The fact that RDA groups are embedded in the community is also, I think, our greatest strength. We've already seen brilliant examples of people wanting to support their local RDA group, and the importance of that RDA group to the people who know and understand it is not being lost. Whether this is the person running all 26 miles of the gallops in Lambourne for their local group, or the virtual cake sale I was told about. Although I have to admit, a virtual cake, the fact that it's virtual seems to take all the fun out of a cake sale. Or an RDA rider with CP, as we had here at Lowlands, taking on a really significant physical challenge, a little bit like Captain Tom, as part of her 2.6 challenge in aid of her group. It's really encouraging and positive to see that when we need it, people will get out and support RDA locally. And because our local support stays local, I hope we can help this grow and expand into more groups. In the longer term, I think these financial challenges will also mean that charities will be forced to work more closely together and to think about how we can benefit from joining forces to support the people we work with. RDA has always been quite independent in spirit, and while that's good in many ways, we will have to be creative to find new opportunities to work with others that support a similar client group, but who can bring knowledge and experience to enhance what we do. I'm not talking about mergers, but think we'll see more examples of more formal working partnerships and sharing skills. Just this morning, I've been discussing a possible link up with a charity in Milton Keynes and how we can use that to provide confidence and personal skills building for very young people with autism, not just riding, but around horses. They've been doing this for 10 years and they're keen to expand their operation. So there's an opportunity there for us to do a bit more and a bit differently. And this is a big opportunity for all of us to consider how we improve the experience for our participants and how we extend the scale of what we do. It might seem a bit perverse to be thinking about new and expanded services at this time, but I think the lockdown provides us with a real opportunity to think about how we might reset when we reopen. And finally in this bit, in terms of thinking of the wider picture, one of the unexpected but positive spin-offs of this crisis has been the newfound enthusiasm and respect for the care sector. This is a good thing, and I believe this is an opportunity as people start to realise the extraordinary amount of work that is carried out, often by volunteers, to provide support, care and therapy services to people within their communities. We haven't always been good at recognising and shouting about the fact that we form part of this landscape, but we do, and we shouldn't be shy of shouting about it. This is not a mercenary attempt to get more money, although no one's going to complain if that happens, but part of our journey to get more people to recognise the value of what we do, to recognise why it is important, and to understand that it must be taken seriously. As always, we want more people to know about and appreciate the extraordinary work of RDA and support what we do. So within this context, all of RDA UK has been working hard at county, regional and national level to support your group at a local level in whatever ways we can. We started a significant fundraising campaign, currently just short of £50,000, and provided support and ideas for your own fundraising. I wish we could simply hand out money to every group to support you, but I'm sure you'll understand that with the variety of ways of operating and the different financial situations of each group, it's best that we support you in your own efforts, and that's what we've tried to do. I hope we've been able to add to your efforts and allow you to raise more money. We have also, however, been able to start making some grants from our emergency fund to groups in the most immediate danger. And we'll be continuing to do that and making a second round of grants in the near future. We've engaged businesses, both those in the equestrian world and beyond, to support you, and we'll continue to do this. We're talking to some of the feed companies and other suppliers about what they can do to support us or to discount items to make life a little bit easier. And in a slightly unusual twist, we've been given a lovely Ashley bike, which we'll be using as a prize for a Facebook campaign to promote what we're all doing. As I've just mentioned, we've been part of the campaign and to put pressure on the government to support the charity sector. The £750 million announced by Rishi Sunak a couple of weeks ago possibly will be hard for many RDA groups to access. So we're keeping the pressure on here and, for example, engaging in the process to make sure that equestrian centres and businesses were included in the sport and for the leisure industry. This means that the funding from places like Sport England and the Scottish Resilient Funds have been able to be used for a wider range of services, freeing up money in other areas. And I'm pleased to see that many groups have been able to benefit from that. In this work and elsewhere, we've been liaising with other organisations in the equestrian world to ensure there is some kind of coordination. As things change, we will of course continue to do this. And we've been sending out regular information and updates to you, which I hope you found useful and helpful. If there's things that you'd like to know more about that we're not telling you about, please make sure you get in touch with us. And the best way to do that is an email to info@rda.org.uk. I also wanted to reassure you that we're doing what we can to put pressure on our insurers to give us some more support. Like many of you, it seems to me that the reduced activity, and therefore presumably the reduced risk, should be reflected in the cost of the RDA's insurance. We went ahead with putting out invoices and insurance certificates because it was important to make sure that was in place. However, we're still in daily contact with our brokers, Howdens, who are putting strong pressure on the insurers to make this happen. As and when there's any news on this, we will of course let you know and make sure the benefits of that are shared out. Rest assured though, we are fighting your corner and we will keep going. Like all of you, we've been doing all of this while having to embrace a completely new way of working. Home offices, Zoom calls, webinars like this. A new feature of life seems to be the daily realization that the one piece of information that I really want is on a piece of paper in the office and I can't get there. At National Office, we furloughed about half the staff, so we've been working with many fewer people to support all the things that I've just mentioned. And on that note, I wanted to thank my colleagues for their fantastic support of the organisation and each other, and also thank you for bearing with us, as I'm conscious that reduced staffing has reduced some of our ability to respond as quickly as we might want. I've been fascinated and heartened by the ways that people have embraced this new working landscape and the ways in which the groups have stayed in touch with volunteers, riders and drivers. At the absolute core of RDA is human interaction, normally with a horse involved, and that human interaction seems to be continuing in a positive and often amusing way, a lot online, through WhatsApp, through Zoom, and still often with pictures of horses involved. The crisis is also, though, a chance for us to reflect on how we can change and how we can innovate. Webinars like this, while common in other areas, have been less common in RDA, but as has been widely discussed, the increasing use of video calls and webinars is something that I think is here to stay. I hope so. I think it makes us more efficient, and I think it makes us more responsive to things, how things change, and increases our ability to communicate with you. Indeed, this is part of a wider opportunity for us at RDA to slightly change the way we communicate with the organisation and use new and more dynamic means. We've been wanting to do this for some time, and we're poised to launch this type of thing this year. We're really just waiting for the right time and reason to do it. Little did I know this would be the time and reason, but it's here, and so this is a change we're able to slightly accelerate. The crisis has also shown us some important things for fundraising. In the absence of having a 100-year-old retired army officer with a Zimmer frame, something we could all do with, and many congratulations in respect to Captain Tom, we need to up our game and embrace digital fundraising. This is an area where I believe we were probably underprepared, both in terms of our own response from RDA UK, but also how we can support and coordinate with you. And this is something that we will try and address as we move forward. In terms of delivery of services, it's tempting to look at what's happening now and think we must adapt all of our services for this new world we're in. I know many groups are doing some really good work in this respect and finding new ways to engage and support their riders and drivers. Whether that's developing online services for online exercises for riders, or a group taking their ponies onto the streets of London for their riders to see and wave to from lockdown. These are important and innovative, creative ways of keeping our work relevant for people who are involved with the organisation in the current situation. Some charities are quickly evolving their whole working model to fit with the lockdown and plan to retain this change in the longer term. At RDA, I think we need to protect the importance of that human-to-human interaction I mentioned earlier and make sure that the changes we make now are either about getting through the next few weeks and months and or about enhancing the experience for our participants. For sure, we can do more online, and we should, but this should be an add-on to the basic service which we must aim to get back to in some way. So for me, adaptation of our services is about improving the experience and extending our reach and awareness rather than changing the way we operate. We need to extend our opportunities further into the community, and we can do that by engaging people online. As we do this, we're also conscious that there are tentative moves towards the easing of the lockdown and the practical changes that this is going to necessitate. And I'm absolutely aware that this is in the forefront of many people's minds. We're working now on how we support and advise you through this change, and it's clear that this is going to be a phased change and much more complicated than the decision to cease operating. This phasing will be reflected in RDA's own approach, I'm sure, and when you get back to work will depend largely on the circumstances of your group, in particular your client group, and also your volunteers. For me, there are three top priorities which I hope you will agree with, and those must be the welfare of our participants, the welfare of our volunteers, and the welfare of our horses. And everything we do must protect those three priorities. Starting with the horses, I know that many groups have either put horses out to grass or sent them off to other places, and this will of course have an impact on their ability to restart, particularly if they're not fit or not used to the work again. Personally, I love the idea of being sent away to sit in a nice restaurant in the sun for a couple of months, but I'm fairly sure when I came back, I'd be a different shape and less able to do some of the things I like to do now. Riders and drivers too will have felt the impact on their own fitness and ability. Many may be shielded and will have struggled to exercise and stay fit. Alongside this, there will be those for whom confidence has lessened, and it may, for some, feel like starting again. So we'll need to be able to take into context that lack of physical fitness and perhaps the increased anxiety of coming back into the group. And critically, we know we need to be able to support you to protect your volunteers as well. RDA relies on volunteers, but we shouldn't take them for granted, of course. We're in the process of investigating right now exactly how we can do this in terms of practical advice and support. We will be, in the next few days, producing a specific COVID-19 risk assessment, which we hope to send out to you in the near future, and which will guide you about the things and actions we think you need to take, you need to have in place before you can reopen. As well as thinking about practical measures like cleaning and providing hand washing facilities, we aim to use this to guide you about how to keep people safe. I'm conscious that many volunteers will be in vulnerable categories themselves, either through age or through specific health conditions, and we have a duty to protect these people. I'm also conscious that many of our brilliant volunteers are itching to get going, as am I, and will not want to be held back from their ability to support riders. I know that sometimes we're going to need to be robust to curb some of that enthusiasm and we aim to give you the resources to do that within your groups and keep everyone safe. Conversely, there will also be volunteers who are nervous about the implications of returning, and we need those people to feel confident that things are in hand and that by coming back to RDA, they're not going to put themselves at any risk, both riders and volunteers. We know that groups will have to take into account the requirements and safeguards put in place by partner organisations like school and care homes. Inevitably, again, these will vary according to context and locality, and we need to give you advice that is flexible enough to be respectful of their requirements so we can work with those organisations. So our aim in the next week or so will be to provide you with the resources, including a framework to help with decision making, that enable you to make sure you're asking the right questions and putting the right things in place to be able to respond in a way which allows you to start to reopen as and when appropriate. As with many things across RDA, this response is going to vary from group to group, and you will need to decide what is appropriate in your context with our guidance. Please use our resources to help in this process and ask for help from your county or regional teams if you need it. If your advice and plan is different from other groups nearby, remember that circumstances will be different and do what is right for you. I'm sure there will be cases where advice appears to vary across neighbouring groups. We'll do what we can, but we also need to continue to be patient. This change is going to take a long time to reverse, and for some of our groups, I think the impact will be for many months, I'm afraid. Across all of this, we're also coordinating still with our colleagues at the other BEF and equestrian bodies to try and ensure that our approach is in line with theirs. So I know Claire is in touch with her counterparts at the Pony Club and the British Horse Society, and we'll try to make sure that all of our responses are in line. To better understand this and to make sure that we pick up the general trends and concerns across your groups, we'll be running a simple and short survey which we'll be sending out in the next week. We've discussed this with the regional chairs, and some elements will be picked up with them and their team, so they'll come to you to get specific information about your group. Please take a look at both our survey and respond to your regional teams and return the information. It'll only take a few minutes, and it will really help us understand what are the key concerns for your group, and in turn, how we can shape the support to make sure we're looking after you and giving you the advice you need over the next few weeks and months. It will also help us continue to speak with authority and insight when we're influencing decision makers on your behalf and adding to the general cry from charities. Many of you have asked about the requirements for face masks and other PPE. As in other areas, the guidance for this is still emerging, and we're already looking into ways of sourcing this so that we can benefit from bulk discounts. As and when the government make the situation clear about the rules, at least south of the border, we will send our guidance and let you know what we've been able to set up in terms of sourcing this equipment. Suffice to say, we're not going to be the only people looking for this, and quite justifiably, there may be others with more immediate need who are ahead of us in the queue, and we're going to have to accept it may take some time. As we move through this, please feel free to share our information with all those for whom it's relevant to do so. I know that many groups have already done this to great effect. It was good to hear from a mother the other day, for one of our riders praising her group for being the only organisation that's regularly been in touch, phoning her up to explain what's happening and to check in with her and her daughter. So keep that up, please, because that's really brilliant. We will, as things develop, also be thinking about how we adapt services more generally and how this fits into our wider strategic plans. In the short to medium term, we're considering what plans we had for this year that we can put on hold or adapt in order to better support you through the next months. However, to get back to my sailing analogy, it feels as this is the moment we've weathered the first part of the storm, got things a little bit under control, and we're now assessing the damage and need to focus on the short term rather than the long-term planning. There will be time for that, and we can sort out our long-term direction as we move forward. So with the level of uncertainty we all face at the moment, it's hard to plan exactly what's going to happen next and when it will happen and how that will impact upon us. But please know that our single focus right now is to be as ready as we can to provide you with the support and advice that will allow us all to get back to supporting riders and drivers as soon as we possibly can. We know that the world won't look exactly the same and we'll be doing things differently. But as I've said, at the heart of this, that we need to make sure will be the need to make sure that disabled people continue to benefit from the activities on or around a horse. That's what we're here for, and that's what I want to get back to. So really that's as much as I wanted to say, but I just wanted to finish off by thank you for joining me and thank you for listening to this. It will be recorded and made available, so if you want to, feel free to share it. And I hope you found it useful and interesting. This has been a difficult and stressful time for all of us, but I think the community spirit, the sense of humour and the sense of determination to get through this has come through loud and clear, and once again has made me really proud to be the chief executive of this very, very special organisation. So thank you very much indeed for joining me, and I hope you managed to get some good and well-deserved time off over the weekend. Thank you.